Millions of boats in America right now are old enough and aging fast enough that the market has quietly started refusing to let them sell. Not because nobody wants them, because something invisible from the dock is stopping the sale before it ever happens. And the part that should worry you, whether you own a boat or not, is that this is not the bottom. It is about to get worse. Here's what that actually looks like. A boat sits listed for months. The owner drops the price, then drops it again. Showings happen, people walk the deck, and then they just disappear. Not because the boat is ugly or unloved, because 3 separate walls, invisible from the dock, are quietly blocking the sale before a single dollar changes hands. Start with the first wall, the loan. Most lenders simply will not finance a boat once it crosses a certain age, typically somewhere between 15 and 25 years old depending on the lender. And plenty cut it off well before that. Boat loans also run long, often 10 to 20 years, which is part of why lenders get nervous about a hull that is already decades old before the loan even starts. So if your boat is in that aging window, and a huge share of America's boats are, your buyer often cannot borrow the money even if they desperately want the boat. They would need to bring cash. And most people shopping for a $40,000, $50,000, even $100,000 boat do not have that sitting in a checking account. So the pool of people who could actually complete the purchase shrinks down to almost nothing, no matter how many people love the boat at the showing. Now the second wall, insurance, and this one's gotten brutal fast. A typical policy on an ordinary runabout or pontoon might run a buyer $200 to $500 a year, but in coastal states like Florida, Texas, and Louisiana, insurers have started requiring a written hurricane haul-out plan before they will even quote a price on an older hull, and plenty of them just decline outright. No price, no policy, period. Part of the reason insurers are so cautious is what they are actually on the hook for. If a boat sinks in a navigation channel, federal and state law can require the owner to pay for wreck removal, and that bill alone can run anywhere from $10,000 to well over $100,000. An insurer looking at an aging hull near hurricane water sees that exposure and simply walks away. Most marinas and lenders will not let you keep or finance a boat without proof of insurance. So even a buyer with cash in hand can get to the closing table and have the entire deal collapse because no insurer will touch the boat they are trying to buy. Then the third wall, the survey, and this is the one that kills deals nobody saw coming. Any serious buyer pays an inspector to crawl through the boat before closing. On an older fiberglass hull, that inspection routinely turns up water trapped inside the deck, soft spots underfoot, blistering below the waterline, an engine on its last legs. The inspector writes it up, the buyer's loan falls through, or their insurer backs out, or the buyer just walks. Stack all 3 walls together, the loan, the insurance, the survey, and you get a boat that is technically for sale and practically impossible to sell. On paper, it's a listing. In reality, it's stuck. So how many boats are actually sitting behind these walls? Look at the scale. There are somewhere around 11 to 12 million registered boats in the United States today, and the median age of the entire fleet is about 25 years old. Read that again. Half of every boat in America is 25 years old or older, sitting right in or past the exact age range where lenders start saying no and insurers start asking hard questions. This isn't a handful of unlucky old clunkers. This is a meaningful slice of the entire national fleet, quietly aging into unsellable territory at the same time. And here's why it's about to get worse, not better. 2 things are accelerating at once, and they are feeding each other. The first is the owners themselves are aging out. Industry data on boat ownership shows the median age of a boat owner in America is now around 60 years old, and there are more owners in their 70s than in their 40s. The same people who bought boats 25 years ago are still mostly the ones who own them today. They are just 2.5 decades older. As they age, they are exactly the people most likely to need to sell because they cannot climb aboard anymore, cannot afford the slip and insurance on a fixed income, or they pass away and leave the boat behind entirely. And when that happens, the boat usually does not land with someone who wants it. It lands with adult children who never asked for a boat, do not know what it is worth, do not know about loan cutoffs or hurricane insurance clauses, and just want it gone. So the supply of older, harder to finance boats hitting the market is not slowing down. It is about to climb year after year as that generation ages out all at once. The second accelerating problem is the market they're selling into. 2021 was one of the best years the boating industry ever had, with spending on new boats alone reaching $20.8 billion, part of a total industry spend of $56.7 billion that year, and millions of new buyers jumping in during the pandemic boom. That wave of boats is now 4 and 5 years old, hitting the secondary market right as new boat sales have fallen for multiple years straight. Full year 2025 data shows new powerboat retail sales down close to 9% from the year before to around 215,000 units, and the slide has continued right into early 2026. Meanwhile, pre-owned sales, which make up the vast majority of all boat transactions in a typical year, fell more than 6% in 2024, the most recent full year with complete data. Dealers are sitting on a glut of unsold pandemic-era inventory. The National Marine Manufacturers Association itself describes the current market as having shifted from a seller's market to a buyer's market, and forecasts into 2026 point to continued softness and downward price pressure, especially on boats under 30 feet. Every boat that comes onto an already flooded market makes every other listing harder to move and pushes the whole used market further down. Put those two trends together. More aging owners forced to sell every year into a market that already has more sellers than buyers and is forecast to stay that way. That is not a temporary slump working itself out. That is a structural mismatch that gets wider with each passing year, not narrower. If this is changing how you think about the boat sitting in your own slip, hit subscribe, because I talk about the stuff dealers never bring up at the show. And there's a brutal irony sitting underneath all of this. The same things that should make a boat easy to sell, the fact that fiberglass survives for 50 or 60 years and barely shows its age, are exactly what's choking the market. A boat doesn't have to look bad to fail the survey. It just has to be old enough to trip a lender's cutoff or an insurer's hurricane clause, and the hull can look pristine and still fail every single wall at once. Owners look at their boat, see clean gel coat and a running engine, and assume it's worth something close to what similar boats sold for years ago. The market disagrees, and the gap between what an owner thinks their boat is worth and what a buyer can actually finance and insure is exactly where deals go to die. So picture where this leaves an actual seller today. Their boat runs fine, it looks fine, and it sits month after month while the asking price slides further down and the buyer pool keeps shrinking because the obstacle was never the boat. It was always the system around it, the loan cutoff, the insurance wall, the survey that finds what 50 years of salt water always finds eventually. None of that shows up in a listing photo. It only shows up the moment someone tries to actually close the deal. And here's where UNSELLABLE quietly turns into something worse. An owner stuck with a boat nobody can finance or insure still has to pay the slip fee every single month while it sits there not selling. At some point, for a lot of people, the math stops making sense. Paying to keep an UNSELLABLE boat afloat is just paying to delay the inevitable. So a portion of these stuck listings don't sell at all. They get pulled down, the payments stop, and the owner walks away entirely, which is exactly how an unsellable boat becomes an abandoned one. The two problems aren't separate. Unsellable is the waiting room. Abandoned is often where it ends up. So the next time you hear that a boat is a great investment, remember this. For millions of owners across America right now, the hardest part of owning a boat isn't the purchase price, the fuel, or the slip fee. It's the day they try to sell it and discover the market quietly stopped letting that happen years before they noticed. And with an aging generation of owners running straight into a market the industry's own trade group describes as already favoring buyers, with more inventory and more negotiating power on the buyer side than sellers have seen in years, that day is coming for a lot more boats before it gets any easier. Do you think the USD boat market bounces back, or does this keep getting worse? Tell me what you think in the comments, and I will see you in the next one.